And before we get going, here's a word about our sponsors. SDHQ Motorsports is a powerhouse 30,000 square foot facility with 45 family members reporting for duty. This single owner, single location business is based out of Gilbert, Arizona. It can handle anything from a hot rod, daily driver, pre-runner, race vehicle, half-track or Kugelwagen, or just about any other project you need help with. Their skilled staff with hundreds of years of combined experience eats, sleeps, and breathes performance. So go check them out at sdhqmotorsports.com or check them out on Insta at sdhqmotorsports. Well, hello and welcome along to another We Happy Few 506 podcast with myself, the beautiful Doug Allen, and our resident Brummy historian Ben Mayne. He's going to hate me for saying that. I know you're not actually from Birmingham. How you boys doing?
I'm well, thanks, Matt, and yeah, good to see you. See you both. How are you doing, Ben?
Good evening, Matt. Good evening, Doug. Yeah, all good. Thank you. Yeah, recovered from a week of battlefields and Christmas markets last week, so I'm all good to go, ready for the Bulge this coming week.
Were you in the Bulge last week?
Yes, I was actually. Yeah, I did. I did pop down to the Ardennes for a little bit of it, down like Piper's Camp Group Piper route around there, Manhay, Gramaneel.
What's the weather like down at the moment? Because I think Matthew's just about to go to Bastogne.
Matthew is.
Yeah, it was okay, to be honest. It was a little bit damp, but temperature-wise, it was fine. But on the Friday morning that we left to come back, the temperature had massively dropped. In Belgium, it had dropped down to about -4 in the morning. So it's only going to get colder now, really, isn't it?
And what day was it? Was it a couple of weeks ago that you missed your hairdressing appointment? Or
I'm booked in this coming week.
yeah.
I haven't had my hair cut for like 8 months. I'm just growing it. You should see it in the morning. My hair in the morning actually looks a little bit like yours, Ben. That's right.
So how much product does it take to get it where it is now then, Ducky?
It doesn't take any product. It just put water on it. I just stuck my head under the tap before coming under it because normally it's like in the morning it's like that.
All right, and then it naturally quiffs up like that.
Yeah, it just goes. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. And you're back in the Bulge.
Anyway, get on with it.
Yeah, we should. We're back in the Bulge next week.
Yeah, I head down there on Friday for 4 days.
Yeah, that's when we're going down as well. I think we're going Friday.
Yeah, I haven't checked the weather for it. I always say during this period, I really hope for like guests' perception of it that we've got a foot of snow, that it's like -5, just to give you that tiny little glimpse of what it must have been like.
That's what Matt hopes for, and that's why he normally does this thing in January when it's like -15, and to give it the full effect.
Darn right, that's what I do.
Yeah, it really does give you that little glimpse of what it must have been like. And you literally can't imagine it, that you're not just fighting against an enemy that is shooting at you, wanting to kill you. You're also fighting against the elements and the cold. And even now, all three of us, if we go out at wintertime and you're not wearing the right clothes, you get miserable. When you get cold, damp, you can't imagine what it would have been like for them there.
Yeah.
No,
how long were the guy in Bastogne? How long was Easy Company actually there for before getting relieved?
So coming in around 18th, into the line 19th.
December?
December, sorry, yeah. It's just after the battle down in Noville with Team Desiree. And when do they go to Rachamps? 16th of January, I believe it is their first night inside for roughly nearly a month.
Yeah, it's the best part of a month, isn't it, really?
Mm.
Well, let's back up because it being the sort of the eve of the Bulge and the 80th anniversary and the fact that we're all going there and we're all touring and stuff, I kind of wanted to do a sort of Battle of the Bulge catch-up pod and just sort of set the scene a little bit. So how are the opposing armies set up in December? Does it look like they're settling in for the winter? I mean, I know the Germans have got an offensive planned, Well, what are the Allies doing? Are they sort of like rest and recuperation, settling in for the winter, thinking nothing's going to happen while the weather's horrendous? What's going on?
Yeah, to keep it short and sweet with it, really, the Ardennes had been perceived by the Allies, or more so the Americans that are holding the line down there, that it's not a suitable location where the Germans, even if they thought the Germans were capable of doing something, would take that opportunity to go through the Ardennes because of just how the geography of the land is, all those the rivers, the valleys, the high hills. I know the Belgians refer to them as mountains, but to us they're kind of like big hills, really. All the forest area. It's not really suitable to go putting tanks, armor through all those roads at the height of winter for obvious reasons. And you also have the Americans, because of perceiving it's going to be a quiet location, then put in units into the line that are either what we refer to as green, so not seen combat before necessarily, or some of the more well-known divisions, 1st Infantry Division down there, the 4th Infantry Division, like for rest, refit, and just to get their numbers back in. If you look at the 1st Division's a really good example that they've been fighting around Aachen, they've been in the battle at Hürtgen Forest, and they've had pretty much around 70% casualty rate for them since the morning of 6th of June up to you could say the end of the Battle of the Hürtgen Forest, 16th of December. Their casualty rate and replacements coming in 70% of those now in the line are replacements. So they've had huge casualties. So it was referred to the ghost front, really, a nice quiet place, or hopefully quiet for them, just to get into that soldiering way of life and get used to being out on that front line or retrain the replacements.
Whereabouts in the
Yeah.
line? Sorry, whereabouts in the line were they? I've got like a little animated map here. Whereabouts is that the First Army you were saying?
So the divisions that I was talking about, yeah, the US 1st Infantry Division have been up towards the northern end, the northern shoulder. So
Yeah.
around, if you visit like the Alsenborn Ridge, you'll start to find their memorials more so around the September time when it's all liberated as well. A lot of those memorials are for the liberation of the Ardennes. But yeah, for the 16th of December, that northern shoulder part of the line is then occupied by the US 99th Infantry Division. So they were green. They were a new unit into the line. I think they landed in France around September and then slowly make their way across and then put into that northern shoulder area to hold the line.
Yeah, I could see them out there. What were they up against? What was the German army
Yeah,
around
and
the shoulder?
part of that question as well, Dougie, if you don't mind me hopping on that
Yeah,
question,
sure.
is other than the geographical difficulties, which obviously made the higher ups think this is a safe place for people to refit, retool, train. Um, what was I mean, they didn't think there was an attack coming. What was the German thinking behind it, and who was part of the attack? Like Dougie says, it was the last throw
So,
of the dice, right?
oh yeah. I do always argue as soon as the Allies landed on the beach of Normandy and on those drop zones that the game was kind of over. But the one man who thinks that this was a good idea and that it could change the war from the German perspective, what was Hitler? He believed that he could amass this large army for the 16th of December, upwards of 250,000 troops over about an 80-mile stretch of line through the Ardennes down into Luxembourg. And he believes that he has the resources, the firepower, the armor to punch a hole straight through the Ardennes, as he did in 1940, and then his
Right?
end
Is he
objective
deluded
was,
into thinking he can do it again? Or is that the
yeah,
point?
yeah. I think you could go down the usual whole debate around Hitler's mindset, and that he thinks that yeah, they can pull this off. They can get all the way to the coast to Antwerp and effectively split the Western Allies in two. So the Canadians and British would have been trapped to the north around Antwerp, and they would have effectively created a Dunkirk pocket, for example. And the Americans then would have been to the south. Hitler thinks that if he can successfully do that, he can then bring the Allies to the negotiating table to then go for peace. And then, if he had peace with the Western Allies, he can throw all the resources to the east to go after what he deemed as his true, real enemy, the Soviets. So that's kind of his mindset of why he wants to carry that out. The two senior German generals that are sitting at the top don't agree with it at all. Gerhard von Rundstedt, Field Marshal Model don't think it's going to work, but they go ahead with it. And then another reason why no one's really questioning or going to stand up to Hitler is because it goes all the way to that bomb plot back in July 1944, where he's got people, he's starting to question, well, who is actually with me or not? Because they've already tried to kill me once. And we all know the repercussions if you dare to cross him, what the outcome would have been. So no one was ever really going to say to Hitler, this plan is never going to work through the Ardennes in the winter of 44. Let's just forget about it. They just carry on and railroad through with the plans.
And to go back to Dougie's question, which was who was there, who has he managed to amass? Because he's lost armies on the east, he's lost armies all over the place. He's done that kind of Napoleonic thing where he's just kind of turned his back on the east. Like Napoleon did it all. He just left. He didn't take Russia, so I'm just going to leave you there to die. Who has he managed to amass? Where are they? Kriegsmarine? Who are these? Are they anybody he can get hold of, or are they decent units?
Yeah, it's a real good question. And there are lots of units that the majority of listeners will have heard of before from the German perspective. So the 1st, the 2nd SS Panzer Division, the 12th SS Panzer Division, the 2nd Panzer Division. They're the bulk of the panzer divisions that are going to look to drive through the Ardennes region.
So their objective is to get to, is it the Meuse River? I don't know how you pronounce it, Meuse. So their objective was that. But the troops on the Allied side were basically replacements, but the troops on the German side, they weren't, were they? They were coming from the Eastern Front, weren't they? A lot of them, and were like hardened veterans by this point.
So a lot of the German well-known units, if I refer to them as that, they are also suffering mass casualties because they've been fighting all the way back from Normandy.
Right.
They've been all the way across Northwest Europe, forced back, and due to their losses, they are rest refitting. What's kind of supplementing the armour side of the German offensive, they bring in the Volksgrenadier, so your infantry that are embedded within the armour. But when you start to then look at how long some of these new infantrymen have been trained, I've read accounts that they'd literally had a couple of weeks training and they've been given about 5 days worth of training on weapons, on rifles, yet they're put into the front line and then they're going to be kind of like the vanguard in some places with the advance. You do have some more well-known infantry units on the ground. So the Fallschirmjäger, the German paratroopers are there. And one thing, I always say this out on tour, if you're around that northern end of the Bulge, the northern shoulder at Elsenborn Ridge, not many people realise that as part of this plan that Hitler put together, it actually includes a German parachute drop up onto the Elsenborn Ridge as well, which, if you think around what the Germans needed weather-wise to make this a success for them, that is, they need low cloud cover, they need atrocious weather, fog to stop the Allied air power coming in, so 2nd Tactical Air Force, the 9th US Air Force, you want them grounded so they can't target all these columns of armour. But as well as that, Hitler thinks that he can drop a camp group of around 600-700 Fallschirmjäger onto one of the highest points in the Ardennes. And it's, again, crazy when you start to break that down and think, how did you ever think that this was going to be a achievable operation?
But it is successful in the beginning.
Yes. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah. So I also say credit can be given to the Germans for their logistical build-up of this to even get in a position to start on the morning of the 16th. And you're right, Matt, they do break through pretty much all across the line. The Americans sitting there thinking, this is the ghost front, nothing's going to happen here. They're in for a very rude awakening around 5:30 in the morning with intense artillery barrages, mortar barrages onto that front line, completely unprepared. And then all of a sudden they've got infantry, Fallschirmjäger, they've got panzer divisions bearing down on them and straight through the line in the majority of places. It's what happens kind of after that in the coming days that turns it. Although you can argue that it doesn't get off to a good start for Camp Group Piper, that are part of the first SS when you look at the northern part for different reasons. But yeah, the Germans break through that first American line very, very quickly.
And so, I mean, just to bring it back to the 101st, then how quickly the 101st motivated, mobilized, and sent up to the line? I mean, you said it was the 18th, or was it the 19th?
Yeah, without double checking my notes, it's around, yeah, they're mobilized, I think, 17th at, they're out in Camp Mormelon,
Right.
France. They're same as 82nd Airborne. They're pretty much the only reserves that the Americans have as well that are available, and they're quickly put into the trucks, as most people will have seen in the series, and they're taken over. When they arrive just to the north of Bastogne itself, off the trucks there, they've got men of the 28th Infantry Division uh, falling back from the areas of like Houffalaise, and that's where there's the accounts that they're stripping the men of anything that's usable because they need warm clothes, they any grenades that are available, ammunition. They need to grab as much as they can because of the rush that they were moved up to the line. That supply chain should quickly catch up with them in the next few days. But then you've got to take into consideration the encirclement of the town stops those mass supplies coming in for them as well.
And I mean, obviously, I mean, we're all with the Band of Brothers episode 6 and the Bastogne episode and everything, and the way that it's filmed and the way that we learn about that history. Like, who else is there? Because obviously they've got to have armor support, tank destroyer support, tanks. Who else is there? Who else is sort of part of the encirclement?
From the uh, American perspective, is that?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Sorry. Okay. So, yeah, artillery battalions, a limited number. You've got a small number of uh, armor that have been brought up. So, when you start to look at the armor in the early phases prior to the 101st arriving out to the northeast, all the way around to the southeast, the three main roads that lead into Bastogne, you've got the American armor pushing out. So Team Desabry, Team Cherry, Team O'Hara, that with Sherman tanks, not a huge number at all. You're probably talking around 10, 15 in each unit, pushing out towards the eastern side on the three main roads to try and block anyone coming through, which is going to be one hell of a task. And Team Desabry's at Noville is the prime example of that with what happens to them. You've got, I mentioned men from the 28th Infantry Division falling back through the lines. That some of those are retained, so I'll stick with Team Desiree at Noville. Major Desiree is keeping engineers back to help with roadblocks, to put up defences. He says the infantrymen that were falling back were pretty much of no use to him. And the reason
That's what I was going to ask you that. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I was going to ask. So
That's fine.
if you're someone like Desiree or Cherry O'Hara and guys of the 28th Infantry Division or whoever is falling back, having taken a shellacking,
Yeah.
like, do you just let them go? Do you just let them fall back to the back lines, or who do you cherry pick out of it? Because you don't want the morale of your men to be sort of deflated completely by the fact that these guys have been kind of like shot to pieces and are shell shocked and all the rest of it. So how do you go? How do you go about that process? Is it like, well, let's just let them go, and if anybody sort of sticks their heels in and says, "I want to fight with you guys," I'll take you on, or did he just cherry pick the engineers or guys that he really needed?
Yeah, all those points you've made are pretty much exactly what happened. So the engineers were retained to keep them at the front for building roadblocks, laying mines.
Right.
But the infantry, the accounts are that he decided very quickly there was no point in keeping them in the position because they were more than likely just going to jump into basements and take shelter than stand and fight. Because, as you said, Matt, they've already taken one hell of a beating and falling back already. They were in no fit state. Morale was gone. You're probably going to find wounded men in amongst them as well. He said it was easier to let the infantry just go through, keep the engineers that he needed that would have been of more use. And then Desiree's got to try and hold out with what men he's got down there. And then eventually you do get the 101st come in, and then he gets a company sent down to him from the 506th. I think it's on the afternoon of the 19th of December for a counterattack against the 2nd Panzer Division that are all coming in through that area. And they eventually are allowed to withdraw and fall back to that front line position of the perimeter.
And how long do they cling on for? How long are they clinging on for, and when does the tide turn?
So when you look all up the line, really north to south, different areas, the Germans have got momentum from 16th of December, pushing forward through. I'd say Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, that pretty much becomes the final day that if they had any chance of getting through, it was long gone by then. The Americans had shored up the defensive lines positions, and then it's a case for several weeks, probably for around 2 weeks, that they will then hold that line. They'll bring in their own replacements, make sure that they've got sufficient amounts of ammunition, artillery support, and then slowly in January they'll start to push the Germans back. So the end of the Battle of Bulge really is the end of January, and all the gains that the Germans had successfully taken in that first seven-day period roughly was then recaptured by the Americans with the help of the British for a tiny small part of it as well.
Where were the Brits?
So the Brits came in around the area of Hutton. So they're down towards Hutton. They'll come in from Seeney. They were originally holding the the northern bank, western bank of the River Meuse as kind of a backstop, just in case. But the Americans had kind of shored it up by then, and the Germans weren't going to make it to the River Meuse en masse to cross. And then around the 2nd of January, the British are put into action. And the northern area of the line in the Bulge as well, Montgomery's given command of them. And that probably didn't go down too well with the American units, thinking, great, Monty's in charge of us again. It's only for a short period, but Monty's overseeing that. The British are helping. Places where you'll find if you go visit the Ardennes today, so La Roche en Ardennes, you'll find British memorials around there, the villages of Bandé. So there's a small area corridor where the British were helping the Americans to just push the Germans back.
Did Monty claim that he rescued the Americans? I think he did, didn't he?
Yeah, it didn't go down very well, really. And the whatever spin you try to put on it, this was a American battle. This was an American victory. And with Montgomery's comments, Churchill even has to stand at the dispatch box in the House of Commons, and he makes reference to the Americans and an American victory in the Ardennes against this huge German onslaught. Montgomery did ruffle a few feathers with saying that, and he would have definitely got people's backs up. But that's kind of Montgomery all over, really, with how we know he can be.
And how was Christmas for the guys on the line? Because obviously that's when we're going around that time, and it's sort of Belgium's a very Christmassy place anyway, isn't it? So what's the experience of the man on the line with Christmas? Do they get any ration? Do they get a liquor ration? Is there anything? I mean, I know you sent me that great letter from the lieutenant from the 99th Division, and he references in that he gets a liquor ration because he's an officer, and he gives it all to his men because he feels like they deserve it more than he does. What's the sort of what's the experience of the general guy on the line for Christmas? Because we make a big deal over Christmas. So what was it like?
Yeah, I would say for the vast majority, they're still going to be fighting. If you look towards the area of where Camp Group Piper were, so like the likes of the 99th Infantry Division, the 82nd Airborne that had come in around Le Glaise, they're still trying to push back that particular camp group, heavy fighting all around there. So Christmas Day for them would have come and gone very, very quickly. And I would guess they wouldn't have really given it a lot of thought. They will have known they've missed it, but they're busy with the fighting that's going on. And that's probably the same across a lot of the areas on the line. I'm sure the officers behind the line in their HQs had a chance for a nice hot meal and raised probably a little toast. But as for those men in the line, even when you read the British war diaries in relation to those that were down in the Ardennes, their Christmas was postponed, and I'm sure the war diaries they have it something like 25th of January instead. So it's kind of postponed because of the fighting. They would have no doubt got some mail filtering through from home and season's greetings from back home. But as for a sit down meal round the table, which they probably did in Bastogne Barracks with the McAuliffe, the rest of them, no, on that front line in the freezing cold, it would not have been an enjoyable Christmas for them at all.
And so when do the Allies, well, the Americans, start going on the offensive to retake Foy and Novelle and Rachamps and all these places? When are they, and then how difficult is that after being stuck in a foxhole for a month, freezing to death, to get yourself out, start tramping down? We, on our tour, he did a great walking tour down from those foxholes that everyone's been to in Bastogne that they've now fenced off for reasons nobody knows. And he did that great walking tour down through Foy, and we got an idea of the geography of it. When did the Americans actually then start going on the offensive to retake all these little towns? And Donnie does that great narration in episode 7 when he's talking about all the little towns they've got to retake.
Yeah, so they've been, if you say they're in that front defensive perimeter from the 19th of January. It's not until the Battle of Foy is 13th of January. So it's a nearly a month of being up in the woods in the freezing cold. They were probably completely mentally worn out from artillery barrages, the 88s exploding, airbursts, being showered with splinters. So when the time does come for them to start moving forward, I'm sure they were glad that they were going to start moving rather than being stuck in foxholes, and probably also saw that chance, well, if we're moving forward, we might be capturing villages and we'll move inside rather than being in the woods. 13th, they obviously take Foy. 14th, they then move off just to the north of Foy, where they go through down through Cobru. Then the 15th is up into Noville, and then 16th they push on into Rashomp. So for Easy Company in particular, or the 506, that's their kind of timeline where they've been from static from the 19th of December through to the 13th of January, and then they get moving. And then after that night in the convent in Rashomp, they're taken out of the line at that point as well. So, yeah, they would have definitely been glad to have been moving and would have enjoyed being inside for that one night rather than stuck out in the freezing cold elements for sure.
When a unit gets taken off the line, describe what happens. Where do they go? What is they go just behind the line a bit? And is this something that happens just for a day or a couple of days or a week? What happens when a unit comes off the line?
Yeah, I mean, if we stick with Easy Company's experience, and if you think of them being up, whether it's in the Bojac, for example, they can get taken off the line. They can be put slightly behind. They may have gone into Bastogne, where they would have had a potential opportunity for hot meals. If they're really, really lucky, they may have found a bathing unit for showers. That may be for 24 hours, and then they'll get filtered back in the line somewhere else with another unit. But that's at the height of a battle, really, with lots going on. So you're not going to get long periods of R&R as such at that point. When they do come off the line at the end of the Battle of the Bulge, I think they probably think, right, we're going to go back to Camp Mormelon. We'll be there for months, because the whole thing is they're waiting for good weather so then they can make a jump into Germany, potentially similar to what Varsity crossing the Rhine when the weather's better. That was what they probably thought they'd be doing, not being deployed on the ground to fight in a straightforward infantry roll off the back of trucks. So they get a short break, and then they're very quickly put back into the line down in Hagenau, because you've got the Germans with their mini Battle of the Bulge, Operation Norwind down there, trying to break through the lines as well. So they're put in to reinforce the American line. So they're not getting much of a break at all.
And I heard something interesting recently on a podcast about this particular battle. So it's something I didn't know. Tanks don't fight at night. I didn't know this. But is this true? Because obviously they have to be supported by infantry. You have to kind of go on roads, don't you? Because they weigh 60 odd tons, and in this weather, you're not going to put a tank through a forest, are you? Or are you? So is the nature of the fighting, is it a kind of a daytime deal because you have artillery that probably, obviously, I don't know, once you set it, I guess you can fire it all through the night. But and most of the German like armored divisions. You know, they're famous for their tank divisions, and their Panzer divisions, stuff like that. Would most of this have been done during the day, or have I heard some misinformation here?
No, the majority of the fighting armored perspective is done during the day, but the Germans did have and were developing infrared technology, and it was used in the Second World War as well. So I could, it's not an area that I've got a huge amount of knowledge in, but I have seen the photographs and discussed it with another historian before. It's more the latter part of the Second World War that they are fitting infrared to their tanks, which would have given that capability to deploy at night, but it's few and far between.
Mm. Wow.
So it goes back to that point. Yeah, during the Battle of the Bulge, especially the tanks are only really going to be moved during the day, and at night the Germans in the accounts for those first few days when they are breaking through the line, night is when they're going to bring up their petrol, ammunition supplies, replenish, refuel, ready to go again the next morning.
Because one
So
of the
there's no
one of the Piper units actually went quite far, did really well in the early days or first week or two. I forget what the towns are named, but they had success early on, as Matthew said, didn't they? The Germans
yeah,
before they pushed back.
yeah, Kampfgruppe Piper gets off to a slow start. They're probably a good 16, 17 hours behind schedule. But when they do get rolling, the Americans do a good job of forcing them in the wrong direction, really, to where they want to go. But they are, for up until Christmas Eve, really pushing, pushing, and pushing. And then they eventually just
He
have to
misses an
give up.
opportunity, though. Piper misses an opportunity, doesn't he?
Depends which one. I'd say the best opportunity that I think he could have had to progress further was on the 18th of December, where he was sat just above the town of Stavelot, and they basically paused to fuel, as we just discussed. If they'd carried on late that evening straight down into Stavelot, the town was completely undefended. They would have captured the bridge, and potentially they then could have pushed up past Spa and got a bit
Right,
of a
yeah,
run on towards Liège.
Troy Pont,
Yeah,
Stormont or something, stuff like yeah. There's that one
yeah.
division that went all the way along that, holding those bridges, going through those little towns. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so yeah, for me that was an opportunity for Kampfgruppe Piper to have progressed further, but they choose to sit, refit. They probably thought the town was fully defended as well, so weren't going to go down and test it. No reconnaissance was done. It was literally hold on the
Yeah, but
night and then
yeah, but it looks like they got so far, like their supply lines were easily cut because then the parts of their retaken were just getting taken back, or bridges getting blown up, or whatever. So they can't resupply, like say, with fuel and all this kind of stuff, and then they're having to go back and then forward. So they kind of, yeah.
Isn't he under orders to use certain roads as
yeah,
well? Have I read
yeah.
that
I mean,
wrong?
the Americans eventually.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, say that again, Matt. It broke up
Oh,
for
did I
me.
did I
Sorry.
break up? You break up. Isn't he under orders to use certain roads, or have I got that wrong? Or certain ways?
Yeah, so as part of the grand plan, especially through that northern area, they are given prescribed roads to stick to, roll barns as they were referred to. Uh, some are on main roads, your fastest routes, and that's part of the plan as well. That for the operation to be a success from the German perspective, like speed is of the essence. They need to control the bridge. They need to control main road junctions to get those columns of armor moving as quickly as possible. When you go to Hollerath, and if you ever have the chance to go and walk Roll Barn A, it goes straight into the forest, and it literally is just a dirt track. It's not a fully concreted road as we would know it. I refer to it as like a logging track through the woods. Yet they expected to be able to put Mark IV Panzers through down this track that would have churned up very quickly. All the problems that would have come with that.
And all the problems that come with just having one track and a bunch of tanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are multiple roll barns, but that is just one example for the 12th SS Panzer Division that they were going to be using.
And so, I mean, just to sort of like round things off on our sort of Bulge chat here, I do know Robin Laing is he's put, I'm coming. He's already 10 minutes late, but he's an actor, so that's fine. When does the attack peter out? And what do the Germans do? Do they fall back to a defensive line, or do they dig in where they are?
Yeah, different areas across the line, you've got different things happening. So to that northern end, you could say by the realistically probably around the 22nd, 23rd of December for Camp Group Piper, it's all over. They do try and push beyond where they get to, but they're not going to get through the American lines. The Americans, the 75th Infantry Division around Manhay, Grand Manille. You're talking Christmas Day as well is the last final push by the 2nd SS Panzer Division to go through the line that is unsuccessful. It's just two examples. The best way that I describe it is exactly what the Germans have encountered and what the Americans did with putting these roadblocks. So defend, slow the attack, roadblock, fall back to the next line of defense, put your roadblocks in. When the tide turns, the Americans start to push the Germans back, and then the Germans are doing exactly that as well. So they're putting in defensive lines. So it's a slow progress back. They're just trying to hold their lines and gains. So it's just literally just turned upside down from the same experience the Americans were having to how the Germans would then treat their counter.
I've got one more question. Hopefully, Robin will jump on in the next couple minutes. But I have one more question, and it's a subjective question. So anybody can answer this. When the 101st and, for that matter, the 82nd Airborne are bussed in to plug up the lines, what am I trying to say here? Is there a difference because they're shock troops and they're used to jumping in, fighting for 4 or 5 days and getting bussed out again, to when they're on the line for a month? Does their fighting effectiveness drop off as opposed to sort of boots on the ground infantrymen who are used to that type of fighting? Or was the esprit de corps so high amongst the 101st that it didn't actually matter?
I think it does have an impact, not just with Easy Company 101st, other units as well. So 6th Airborne in Normandy, this was a really good question that was put about them being on the front line in Normandy for nearly 3 months. Is that the best use of your airborne forces or better trained forces? They, fitness wise, they would have definitely suffered. They can't go out and do any training exercises, PT work when they're in the line. So they will suffer in that sense. A big thing as part of that would be the dip in morale for all those men. It's not just seeing men killed in that line, the daily shelling from the Germans, that would have definitely had an effect and started to wear them down as well, which when they do get onto the front foot, you've got a problem. If your morale's low, that's going to have an impact when they get onto that offensive side to move forward. So there was lots for the officers to deal with in that front, and how are you going to combat that as well? Because there's not much you can do apart from going and telling the odd private or corporal sergeant to go back to Bastogne, get some hot food and try and warm up for a few hours. There's not a lot you can do to offer them to keep the morale up. And then when night comes, even during the day, they're going to be bombarded potentially by artillery, mortar. So all this would add up to make them not as effective as fresh out the box as such, ready jumping into a combat zone with their objectives, knowing exactly what they were going to be doing. Their briefings are probably coming through quite slow, and they're day after day, they're just going to be told, you're holding the line, you're holding the line, you're holding the line. And then eventually they will get told, right, we're going to make that offensive. And I think after the attack on Foy, if I'm right, Winters actually wrote along the lines of, right, we thought that was it. We would then be taken out of the line. Someone else would come in and then carry that on. But it wasn't. They were given the 15th and the 16th to carry on, 14th, 15th and 16th, carrying offensives onwards. And then that morale again, well, we're on the move, but now we're losing men. We're taking casualties, and the morale effect of that as well.
Yeah, it must have been pretty tough to sort of have 3, 4, 5 days of really dynamic, aggressive fighting when you've been sitting in a foxhole for a month with hardly any ammunition, hardly any rations. I mean, that was sort of pointed out in Band of Brothers, wasn't it? It's like resupply initially wasn't very good at all, and they were down to like one ration a day, one round a day, or for some of the guys on the line. And and then being in that freezing cold, your body must degrade really pretty fast, even for these fit guys. So when it comes to attacking Foy and these other little towns and villages around, they must have been hanging out their arse a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's also testament to the researchers for the series when it was written, that everything we've been speaking about is covered extensively in that series. And it's depicting a true story, not a Hollywood story with a spin on it. This is exactly what they're experiencing.
Might I welcome to the pod one Robin Laing? Welcome,
Evening.
Robin.
Hello, Robin.
How are we all?
Very well.
Good,
Did you have a delicious dinner?
I didn't have a delicious dinner. I was glossing a door. There you go.
Oh.
That's why I was late, because I had to keep my wet edge.
How do you attack it? Are you taking it off the hinges? Are you going the inside panels first? Which way are you doing it?
It's been off the hinges, and it was given a sand when the weather was fine, and then it was undercoated. All the door furniture off, of course.
Yep.
And then they've been rehung so that we can continue using bathrooms and bedrooms and whatnot. It's been I haven't blasted it over like a couple of days. It's been over a couple of weeks. So already done the inside of the bathroom door, and the hinge inside. And now I just attacked the outside of it. This is fascinating, Ben. Look at Ben. He's so glad he joined this podcast. I knew you two would appreciate it, being men of trades.
Men of trades. Yes. Oh, yeah. Nerding out straight away. Where are you? What are you up to, young Robin? Other than glossing doors?
Other than glossing doors, not a lot. Rollering walls and glossing doors. We've done that classic thing of going, it's nearly Christmas. Should we decorate the whole house? That's a brilliant idea. Let's do that. So that's
just doing it. Yeah.
That's mainly what I've been doing. I had a lovely week at the National Theatre of Scotland last week, doing a development week for a script, which was really good fun. I say it was really good fun. It was about genocide.
Oh, wow.
But the actual being in a room for a week and, getting under the bonnet of a script and sort of
being creative. Yeah.
It's genuinely one of my favorite things, script development. I think it's just magic being in a room with interesting people and
having something to get your teeth into.
Yeah. And that sort of thing of it's like creativity and play for the sake of it. There's no real pressure, because all that's going to happen really is the writer's going to go away and do another draft.
Yeah.
So there's no massive pressure to produce a piece of work, or, you know what I mean? There's not a first night.
Yeah, and also I think it frees up everyone's tongue a little bit when the pressure's a little bit less, doesn't it? And everyone could just throw in ideas, and doesn't matter if they're ignored and they don't feel bad about it or whatever.
And there's no wrong ideas. It's just because it's all, everything's posing questions. And even if you sort of go, this might be daft, but why is he doing that? And the writer's like, Oh, yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought of that. I think that might be from a previous draft, or I don't know why I wrote that. I'll need
Yeah.
to I need to work out why I wrote that, which I find always quite interesting about writers because I don't write very much, but when I do have a very clear idea of what I'm going to be doing and why. But quite a lot of playwrights, particularly, they seem to just
Start writing.
they just start writing,
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're like, we had 2 acts of this play, and I said, "What's the third act?" And she was like, "Don't know." Which terrifies me. I think I'm a bit of a control freak.
We were just talking about well, Matthew, what were we talking about? The Battle of the Bulge with Ben about, because they're both doing tours at the minute.
Right.
Oh yeah, are you going as well, Robin? Are you going to be in the Bulge?
I will be in Les Bulge, yes. I head out on Wednesday, I think. Tuesday. I fly on Tuesday to Brussels, and then we sort of head off on Wednesday proper.
How long
What
is
tour are you
your
doing?
tour?
How many days?
Yeah.
I'll be there until the 19th. I think we're back in Brussels on the 18th, I think it is. So
Oh wow.
about 8 days all told doing, and it's the Bulge. It's not like, I don't know about Matt and Doug, but certainly from my point of view, I thought I knew quite a lot about the Battle of the Bulge. It turned out I knew a tiny little bit about Easy Company's involvement in Bastogne. And Bastone's about this big, and the theatre of the Bulge is about this big. So
So
I'm
well,
really
Ben's your
looking
man.
forward to kind of zooming out and getting a wider appreciation of.
So you're doing a tour going through the whole line, basically, all
I-
different areas of it.
Yeah, I mean, we're based in Luxembourg and then in Clairvaux. Matt, you've been to Clairvaux, haven't you?
I have indeed, yes.
So we're based in Clairvaux, but yeah, you sort of head in a different direction every day. You go, Elsenborn Ridge and Hurtgen Forest and
Yeah,
like
Benji's just been talking all about these.
Northern Shoulder, all that, the stuff that's I think I th- I think there's maybe a day or 2 days possibly of like Band of Brothers orientated stuff, and the rest of it is the rest of the Bulge, which was, as I
Well,
said,
this is my next question, Robin. Once you've done the day or day and a half of the Band of the Bulge, Band of Brothers, what do you do? Are you just yes? Are you nodding along, and or how is your history, or do you get asked questions that you think I don't know the answer to that?
people tend not to. I think people know what my comfort zone is.
Right.
And there was quite a large group of people, so there's not always time on the 1 or 2 days that your Band of Brothers orientated for everybody to ask all the questions they want to ask about the show or the vets or other cast, or whatever it is that they if they've got show specific questions they want to ask. So you're there the whole time. But there's other. I don't think it's all touring in terms of like history. I mean, I think there's commemorations to attend and stuff as well, and
Oh, right. Okay.
visiting cemeteries and wreath laying and things like that. Sort of.
Okay.
So it's not a purely it won't all be following a historian around going, and this is where this happened and this is where that happened and that
Aren't you
thing I
doing a
talked
bit
about
of that?
yesterday. Sorry.
Matthew? Aren't you doing a bit of wreath laying this coming weekend in Bastogne? Are you going to do any?
No, we will be out laying wreaths, excuse me, in January.
Oh, okay.
And we've, I'm sorry, I don't know what's happened to my voice. To excuse me, I'm going to have a beverage.
Oh, a little sip of tea.
We've been part of a memorial for the Alice and Dallas crash site from Masters of the Air. So we'll be visiting that in January, laying a memorial there. We've been working with Reg. And I think we've been part of making that happen, and we're going to be laying a memorial there and taking some of the cast to that crash site at the end of January. So we're actually, when we're in Bastogne at the end of next week, we're actually going to go and visit the guy that's helped us put this memorial together and figure it out. Leighton's going to take him a curly whirly to say thanks, which is what Leighton does. It's kind of weird. And so
Can't
we're
get
going
them
to
in
do a bit of
Belgium.
that. Yeah, Can't get him in Belgium.
So,
Yeah, that's what he did
yeah.
when we met Lucy for the first time. Brought her all the way to Bastogne. There's this whole big hoo-ha. Bah, bah, bah. She's never been back to Bastogne. She's going to meet Shane Taylor. Leighton goes and visits her and picks her up from Liège train station and gives her a curly whirly and sends me a WhatsApp picture of her with a curly whirly looking completely bamboozled as to why she's got this or what it is. And he's got this big shit-eating grin on his face like he's done the greatest thing ever.
Love it.
When you're on these tours, hey Ben, you can answer this question as well. Why? Well, you can answer the second question. What's the most common question you get asked? And what's the weirdest question you get asked? Ben, you could have one of those as well.
The most common question is usually about the accent. Usually,
Yeah.
people are like, "How difficult was it? How did you do that?" Because we watched the show, and I always take it as a huge compliment that people are like, "Oh, you're not from Philadelphia," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm from Arbroath." So yeah, that's probably one of the most common questions, if not. Or they ask about boot camp, and then I have to say I didn't go boot camp because Babe was a replacement. And then they go, "Oh yeah, he was, wasn't he?"
Did they ask about Babe, about have you know the fact that you've met him and stuff like that?
Yeah, people are always, and that's as soon as people kind of people, and that's maybe the most common question is, "Did you meet Babe?" And then once I say, "Yeah, I met Babe," immediately, understandably, people are completely lose interest in me, and they're like, "Oh my God, what was he like?"
Mm.
You know, which which is a whole other, as a treasure trove of joy for most people because he was.
But describe him in one sentence, Babe.
God,
Come on. Your spot.
he was a no shit, take no shit, lust for life, dude.
Yeah. I got that impression from him, and I didn't really. Obviously, I said hello to him because they turned up a few times, didn't they?
Mm.
But I never sat down and had a conversation with him. You know what I mean?
did.
But
I did. I did on many
even,
occasions, and the word I would use would be prickly.
yeah,
Prickly.
I did get the prickly side of him. I think
Prickly in a delightful way.
Yeah, I can't remember what I'd
agent
done wrong.
provocateur prickly.
Yeah,
Brilliantly prickly.
Well, I think I'd asked him a stupid question, and then he just fobbed me off really, as he should have done. But I get this zest for life thing. I mean, I say this story a lot. I remember seeing him and Wild Bill together, like 100 meters away, when I'm walking towards them, and surrounded by, I think you're one of the guys, but all at a respectful distance, and it looked like the air around them was fizzing. Do you know what I mean? They had so much energy. It looked like the air around them was fizzing with submission to their force of nature that they had, both of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, completely know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about presence in a room, you know, people can walk into a room and some people,
but that was a different type. It wasn't movie star presence where you're kind of, it was just force of life.
Yeah. Just gravitas, serious dudes that had done serious things and were the most unserious people, if you know what I mean. You know, they they'd seen and done so much, they didn't really have much time for being modeling or you know, that was for, I suppose they had quiet moments of introspection, but generally they were like, come on.
Yeah.
Beer to be drunk.
Beer to be drunk. Did you go visit him in South Philly? Am I got this story right? Or I got the story wrong?
Yeah. Well,
did he open the door with a handgun, or am I thinking of somebody else?
No, that was not. No.
And was that Wild Bill?
I don't think that was Bill either. Someone got shot outside Bill's house while I was there.
Oh, okay.
We were
don't disrespect him. That's
not by Bill. I should hit.
Okay, entirely sure about that.
I was around about the time because they did the big the big Normandy premiere, and then they did a whole load of regional premieres around the States.
Okay.
And I think they did 4 or 5 of them, and they tried to do them around the States so they could invite as many of the vets as they could, you know, to each of these sort of regional premieres. So there was one in Philadelphia for all the sort of Pennsylvania guys. and HBO in their brilliant way were like, "Oh, we'd love you to come to the, particularly because you missed Normandy, we'd love you to come to Philly for the Pennsylvania premiere, And I was like, "Oh, that'd be lovely. Thanks very much." Thinking that, they'd fly me out in the morning and I'd go to the premiere and fly back the next day. And they said, "Oh, and would Pauline would you like to bring your wife as well?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that would be lovely. Thanks very much. That'd be great." And they're like, "All right, a travel agent and be in touch." And about a week later, through the post, this envelope arrived with this pair of tickets, and I was like, "But the outward bound and the return date are a week apart. That doesn't make sense. Why? They've made a mistake here." But no, that was HBO. They flew Pauline and I out first class on BA and put us up in the Four Seasons for a week.
Wow.
And they were just like, "Yes, fine. It's fine." And we had to do various things while we were there. And one of the things we had to do was Time magazine were doing. Babe was actually in hospital. I think he had an abscess on his spine, and he was really.
Ooh.
He was a little bit poorly, and there was a small window where I thought I might be staying for a bit longer here, and not for good reasons. This might turn from a premiere visit into a wake. But he was fine in the end. But so he wasn't around a lot. So it was really me and Pauline and Belle and Frank, and remember Mara McCallion from HBO, who was sort of an artist liaison. So Mara as well. And so Time magazine were doing an interview, and we were in Bill's house in South Philly, and I smoked at the time, and I was like, I don't have any cigarettes. I saw a shop on the corner. I'm going to get cigarettes, and Bill was like, "No, you're not." And I was like, "No, it's fine. There's the shop at the end of the street, isn't there?" And Frank's like, "You can't go and get cigarettes. Don't be ridiculous." And Bill was like, "I've got cigarettes somewhere," and he's like looking down the side of the sofa and on top of the wardrobe, and or not wardrobe, but this sort of dresser. And I'm like, "Guys, I'm an adult. I can go." And they're like, "You're not going to you can't walk to the shop. No, it's not happening." And I'm like, "What?" And then eventually Bill's like, "Oh, here we are. Here's some untipped Capstan full strength." And I was like, "Yum."
From 1947.
Yeah, I brought these back with me, kid. And so then we were outside on the street getting some photos done on Bill's front steps. And then we all went inside. And then about 5 minutes later, the photographer's assistant came in and said, can I use your bathroom? I just need to wash up. And I was like, "Oh, have you hurt yourself?" And he was like, "No, a guy just got shot outside. I was just helping him till the ambulance arrived." And Bill and Frank both looked at me and just gave me this look like, "See? That's why you don't go to the shops in South Philly."
Oh my God.
So, but there's always the potential that if Bill had known there was people getting shot outside his house, then he may well have produced a handgun and gone and defended his castle.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. My favorite Babe story, and I made the really big error in that loudmouth way that I have, especially after a few beers, of telling this story to Trisha, like his daughter.
Do you now want to repeat it on the internet?
Yes, I do, because it's actually pretty funny, but not if you're his daughter. He'd been the night before. I don't know. He'd made no secret of the fact that during his deployment, he'd fraternized vastly with ladies, and they were pulling up to somewhere in the Ardennes on a bus, and he's, I don't know, up the front singing and all the rest of the stuff that Babe used to do, holding court in a top hat, most probably. And at one point they pull up to somewhere and there is a crowd waiting for them, because there was a crowd waiting wherever he went. And the person at the front of the crowd waiting is a 40-year-old-ish woman with bright red hair. To which Babe hits the deck and shouts, "Keep driving, I think she's one of mine." Which is a great story, except when you're telling it to his daughter, it's like, "Oh, I really told that to the wrong person, didn't I?" That didn't happen at all. I just got this kind of stony face. Why'd you tell me that?
Yeah.
Why'd you tell me that? It's a terrible thing to tell me, idiot.
I had a similar experience with a British veteran, similar to that, and I won't name them. or his daughter, but interviewing him, sat there, he's chatting away how they'd been moved to a convent in Belgium for a bit of rest, refit. And he said, being 19, 20-year-old lads, the nuns were in the convent all walking around the grounds. And he said, we'd be hanging out the windows, we'd be wolf whistling, so on. And he said to me, you know what the purpose of the nuns is, Ben? And there's me thinking he's going to go down a real reason what the nuns are about, all of that. And he says, the purpose in life for the nuns was to service the poor and the needy. And I can tell you, we were needy. And his daughter was sitting next to me. I was like, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear what the lads were trying to do with the nuns in the convent.
No.
But yeah.
It goes on tour.
It wasn't a Protestant, wasn't it? It wasn't a sectarian act, was it?
But it just shows they were just normal lads, weren't they? 19, 20, 21-year-old lads. And yeah.
Yeah, how old was Babe around the how old you were portraying him at what, 20?
20, yeah, well, 22, 23.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
All right. So what I've done, Robin, and you can ask a friend because Ben's here. We've done about an hour, so I'll just keep you for another couple of minutes. You can go back to varnishing and glossing. It's always lovely to have you. But I wrote some questions.
Is it a pop quiz?
Kind of, yeah. I know you like a pop quiz. It's vaguely historical in places. It's vaguely Band of Brothers in places. It's vaguely surreal towards the end. So I'm going to ask you some questions and see what your knowledge is like. Okay.
Oh God.
What time was the airborne invasion of Normandy?
H-hour.
Correct. I'll give you a tick. What time was H-hour? It was H. You just come up with that.
H-hour D-Day.
All right. What time is it then?
The landings or the paras?
Stop stalling for time.
No, seriously. What, the paras or the landings?
No, not the landings. The airborne invasion.
The airborne invasion. That was something like. Oh God.
Look at Ben's face. His eyes twitching. He just wants to jump in there. So I'm going to have to poke my cat with the biro.
Yeah, well, it was the middle of the night, wasn't it?
Yeah, I want to say something like. I'm going to have to come up with an actual figure, aren't I?
You've got objectives to take.
I'm going to say 5:30.
Well, the landings were at 6, so that's not a lot of time for them to take their objectives. If it was 5:30.
The landings were later than that. All right, well, it must have been much earlier than that.
Yes,
probably 2:30 or 3.
Ben,
even earlier, wasn't it, Ben? What was it?
Yeah, if you the first down on the ground, British 6th Airborne Division, the Oxen Bucks at Pegasus Bridge at 16 minutes past midnight.
Wow.
And then the parachute landings, I'd say respectively, American or British then, around 1 o'clock in the morning.
1 o'clock is exactly what I've got, Ben.
Wow.
So you can have a big tick there.
But it was actually
they only gave them 5 hours to get their
Yeah.
objectives then, which was what? Taking the guns and stuff that were facing them there on the beaches. Wow. That's not a
Causing
lot.
general chaos.
Yeah, but weren't the landings delayed in the end? It wasn't.
They were delayed
They were postponed for 24 hours, but once it's underway, no, they all come in on time.
I do apologise. I keep jumping off camera because my cat's been in. So I'm going to poke it with a biro. It keeps banging on the door. All right, Robin, back in the game. Name the 5 landing beaches.
Utah.
Code names.
That's a good one.
Utah, Omaha, Juneau, Sword, and Gold.
Correct. Very good.
And wasn't Juneau originally going to be called Jellyfish?
Jelly, yeah, jelly. They're all fish, weren't they?
And they were like, no. What kind of a landing beach called Jelly?
Yes,
I
we did.
think-
We got that little jelly.
That was it.
it's,
They were all
yeah,
fish: jellyfish, swordfish, and goldfish. And then
Yes.
I think it's a bit of a myth over the years that's crept in, but yeah, lots of people think Juno was jelly.
And
and was it?
not true, really.
No, I think it's myth that crept in. One of the
Yeah.
stories around it was that Churchill said he couldn't tell the Canadians that their families, loved ones had died on a beach named Jelly and renamed it for those purposes. But yeah.
Seems reasonable. Like
does,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cop to packet on jelly. It's not
Yeah.
not quite so.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right. This is quite a good one. List in order the Easy Company commanders.
In order.
Yeah, they are 1, 2, 3.
So Sobel,
Yep.
then Meehan,
Yep.
then Winters,
Yep.
then
Bit of a short one. This one.
Heiliger.
Yep.
Then Norman Dyke.
Yep.
Yeah, Dyke. Is he the one that kept yawning and scrabbling off somewhere?
No, that was totally coincidental that I was yawning right now.
Oh, right. But who was the guy that was a company commander and he kept going missing?
Yeah, that's
was
him.
that-
That's Dyke.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's him, Dyke.
And the last one
Pete O'Meara. Spears.
is very good. That was
Wow.
very good.
Forgot about that. I wouldn't have got Spears.
Here's a fun fact.
Yes.
Ronald Spears, what nationality was he?
Welsh.
No,
Scottish, sorry.
Scottish, yeah.
Scottish,
he?
yeah, no. He married a Welsh girl.
Born in Edinburgh.
Was he?
Moved to the.
Yeah.
I think he moved to the States when he was 4.
Three.
Three,
3, 4.
Is
Yeah.
it me? Or
Yeah.
does that make perfect sense?
Yeah, he's a psychopath. Yeah.
Exactly. I have played against people like that in rugby fields many times.
Straight for Leith.
Yeah. Okay, here's a question. Who is the first person that you see on screen in Band of Brothers, the first character?
The first character.
When in the first episode, who is the first Easy Company member that you see in episode 1? So the first guy, Pong, who is it? Probably not who you think it is.
It's on the landing strip. Everyone's getting ready for the aborted jump on the 5th, June 5th, aren't they?
Wee wee.
Who's the very first person that you see? Is it Buck Compton?
No. Benji?
No idea.
You
No.
can make an educated guess?
Oh, Malarkey.
No. Dougie? It's not you.
I was going to wait to say, is it Doug?
It's not you, Dougie.
Haven't got a clue.
Or me. It is Shane Taylor.
There.
Stop, bro. Yeah, and it's because I've
What
heard
was
this
the
question.
scene? What do you
Like
see?
Robin says, it's when they're in the marshland area, and it pans around in an almost kind of docu-style way. Just because
Yeah.
the first guy you see is Shane Taylor, and he's kind of blacked. He's got the the night camo
Yeah.
on as
Mm.
well, so it's kind of
Yeah.
funky.
Meehan does his no jump tonight.
That's right. Oh, jump tonight.
And then,
All right. Here's
and then it was back to Georgia.
Here's an interesting one for you.
We'll be the
Which
judge of that.
Okay, you be the judge of it. Yeah, you are quite judgmental. Which cast member, and I'll give you a clue, it's actually a special abilities extra that kind of became a cast member. I don't know if I've given it away there. Dies in episode 7, reappears in episode 10 in the background of a shot.
Is it Alex Sabga Brady?
It is indeed, yes.
Is it?
Yes. If you watch, somebody pointed out to me on the last tour that I did, it might have been the one that could be you, Benji, actually. If you watch, 'cause obviously Mellet is killed in episode 7,
Uh-huh.
and then
Right,
you see him
yeah.
fade away in the church. where he's Spears is doing the Daryl Shifty Powers business with the helmet, and there's only one piece of paper screwed up.
Yeah, yeah.
If you look in the background, he's called Rogers in episode 1 too. Oh, okay. So he's a multifaceted guy.
He had 3 characters essentially.
He had 3 characters. He had Rogers in
That's
episode
a great
1.
pub quiz. Who had
Mellet,
3 characters? Yeah.
Mellet is killed in 7, and Dude in episode 10. In the background of shot, you can see him kind of grinning as well in the background. We're all on parade in the number 1 gear, and he's.
But he came to Interlaken with us, so I don't remember.
Yes, he must have done for us to do that.
Yeah.
So, wow. So they must have kept him on because his special abilities were so
special.
Good. So special. He is quite special.
Yeah, he was actually an incredible abilities extra. It was the next echelon up.
Yeah.
There were only a couple of them. And he was.
Him and Chris Black. Him and Christian, that was it.
Him and Christian.
Phenomenal abilities.
They do have incredible abilities.
Yeah, they do.
Stickability for a start. Okay, here's a slightly more surreal question. We're getting towards the end in a minute. Discounting Neil McDonough and possibly Donnie, I think, but definitely discounting Neil McDonough. Hypothetically speaking, if there was a round robin of fist fights of the cast members of Band of Brothers, who would come out on top?
Jimmy Madio.
Ooh,
in his
good one.
In his weight range, most definitely. Yeah.
I don't care. Anybody.
Just generally.
Yeah.
Just
generally. Either Jimmy or Michael Cudlitz.
Oh,
Cudlitz, yeah, he's a big lad, isn't he?
Big lad.
Big lad.
Mike's a big fella. Mike's got the heft to take on all comers.
But then you got Kirk Acevedo as well. I mean,
oh my God,
one of the angriest people I've ever met.
Yeah, he was really angry. He was angry in boot camp.
He was angry. He was angry at me, and he never. I did something to him on boot camp, and I thought to myself, I wonder if he's ever forgiven me. He must have done. And he came on one of the Zoom casts and he brought it up straight away, and he hadn't forgiven me. He was like, Matthew, and he brought it up exactly the thing that I did to piss him off on boot camp. He brought it up straight away.
What was it?
We were attacking. It was the whole thing. We were attacking a bridge, all right. And as Benji knows, you have to take a bridge from 2 sides. It's a whole thing. And because I was a first sergeant, they had me in charge of the platoon attacking one side of the bridge. Now, when you attack a bridge as well, you don't just run down the middle. Obviously, you're going to get machine guns. You have to go. Each soldier has to go from either side of the bridge. Do you know what I mean? Like the railings along the side of the bridge, like that. So everyone was just kind of milling everywhere. So I was pushing people from one side of the bridge to the other. Like, you go that way, you go that way, you go that way, you go that way. And he was kind of meandering.
Oh, that's what you look like.
Yes. Kirk was kind of meandering off slightly, and I grabbed his musette bag and threw him to the left, like, you go that way. And he kind of stumbled and fell slightly. And just after the exercise was over, just came to me and was just like, me and you were going to talk. Me and you were going to talk later. And then he was on the bed opposite me in boot camp, and he just used to shine his shoes staring at me. Something from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, just polished and staring at me. And I was thinking, at one point, he's going to do a Full Metal Jacket on me and just put his soap and his towel and beat me to death.
Didn't he fall out with everyone? Didn't he fall out with Donnie as well in boot camp? Didn't they have an argument? I remember that.
No, that's Matthew Settle. Matthew Settle and Donnie were like 2 scorpions circling one another continually from boot camp onwards.
That was weird. And
it really would have been cool if they'd have had a dance-off fight, because I can imagine them having some type of West Side Story fight, those 2. But yeah, they did fall out. But I did see as well, or I think I seen it. My memory is going funny, and Jimmy's told this story so many times. I've done so many tours with him. We were in a bar once, and Matt Settle was annoying him, doing stuff deliberately to annoy him. And Jimmy turned around and whacked him and knocked him over completely, just belted him.
Really?
So yeah, I think the end, I think it would be Jimmy Madio. Pound for pound, it's definitely Jimmy Madio.
Yeah,
pound for pound. But
he's got long arms as well. He'd be a good
long arm somebody.
welterweight boxer, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Ultimately, I think doesn't Kirk do MMA as well? Is he not?
Does he do MMA?
I think he's not done. I think he's done some cage fighting as well. So.
Yeah.
I actually saw him about a month ago, and it was lovely. I hadn't seen him since we
He's
wrapped,
delightful
basically.
now. He's delightful, other
And
than still holding a grudge against me. He's delightful.
oh yeah, he hates you. That was the first thing he said to me.
Yeah, he did. He's like, Matthew,
You see
threw
Matthew
me.
Leach recently? Fucking hate that guy.
Where did you see him, Robin?
I saw him. So he and Frank and Ross and Jimmy were doing a tour with the World War II Museum. And I think the Sarah Kirksey, who organises the educational travel at the museum, she'd invited Shane and I think Rick, maybe, for dinner. And she was like, it was lovely. She was just like, it's really not fair that you don't get to come to dinner because you live in Scotland. So, why didn't you
Do they
come
not
down?
feed you in Scotland?
Why didn't you come down? I'll cover your flight and you can see the guys. Because she said, when was the last time you saw, Kirk? And I was like, I've not seen him since the rap party. Because he didn't. I don't think he came to any of the, like in LA when the show aired. Different weeks, people would do they would host. I was out there when it was airing, so I was at Rennie Moreno's one week, and then the week after that, it was at Pete and Fassbender and Bailey had a
Grimes. It went.
together.
Grimes did one. I know Grimes did one because he lived in the middle of blood. He lived in suburbia or somewhere. I don't know how he managed to find suburbia
the whole of
in
LA,
LA.
isn't it? But did he go to any of Cudlitz's barbecues, annual barbecues?
Kirk.
Yeah,
I think so. But I've never made it. I mean, Michael's
I've never made it either.
very kind.
Did you
I
Matthew?
get an invite every year and reply and go, thanks, maybe next time.
Yeah.
Go if you
You
have the
have to do it.
opportunity. Go because you might have built it up in your head, but it's the nicest time. It's the most chill, cool, lovely time, and it's
not like a Nolan get together then.
Oh yeah, it's not
out of their arse and like
horrendous
sniffing off the fucking
bacchanalian death party with Ozzy Osbourne, Nolan, and that dude from Motley Crue. No, it's way chill than that. Don't worry about that.
The last days of Rome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, wake up, leaving in Las Vegas.
I loved them. I can't remember where I heard it. If I was in his company or if I heard him speaking about it somewhere, Michael Cudlitz, but because he hosts them every year now because he's got a nice big backyard. And they said, and it must have been on a podcast, and somebody was saying, and so, who sends out the invites? Are you in charge of that? And he was like, no, the word just goes out, and if anybody bumps into anybody involved in the show in any way, you just tell them to come. He's like, everyone's welcome. He's like, if you're in town, and then the podcast host said, so, if you're in town, you're welcome. And Michael said, no, you're not welcome. You're expected. And I quite like that about Mike's whole thing. He's like, it doesn't matter, and if people have got, beefs or haven't seen each other for a long time or whatever, it doesn't matter. We were all together for a year, and if you're in town and the barbecue's on, you're expected,
Yeah.
Which is
I think Kirk spat in my whiskey, but other than that, it was great.
Really?
Yeah.
It's what's
It's a
that?
very frothy bourbon. I've never had frothy bourbon before.
Yeah.
Well, I like to say it was lovely seeing him a few weeks back, and he was.
I must make it out there one year. I'd love to do it. I'd love to go
It's
to that.
Me too.
totally worthwhile. It's totally worthwhile. It's you feel really good for a couple of days and then really sad for a couple of days. It's like, oh man, I miss those guys. It's well worthwhile, but it's very nostalgic and kind of sad after a couple of days. You're just like, when's the next one? It's time. All right,
25 years.
I'd better round this up because I can hear my son is still awake and I'm in charge of getting him to sleep. Last question then.
Wait a minute, isn't he like 21?
I put him in one of those baby
I'll read him
Bjorn,
a story. Yeah.
baby Bjorn carriers and wandering down the
can you not
street.
just stick him in a sling or something? And,
Yeah, put him in a baby Bjorn
podcast.
Yeah, and I just ride the district line until he falls asleep. All right, last question. Of the Band of Brothers cast members, which one of them would you want to be stuck on a desert island with?
It's a bit of a loaded question, given you and Doug are here.
No, not at all.
I'm not.
I don't want to be on an island with you, Robin. It's fine. You can not pick me. I would eat you within 36 hours, so don't pick me. And not in a good way. A really bad cannibalistic way. I would eat you.
Keep it family friendly, please, Matthew.
I'm sorry. I do apologize.
I know.
That's a difficult question.
That's a really tough question.
Yeah. That's difficult. I don't think I could answer that.
Nah.
I couldn't just pick one. It'd have to be 3 or 4.
Can we not? Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Nah, there's two.
All right, this is probably an easier one then. Who would you not like to be? Definitely not like to spend. I think with me, I think I've got the answer to that one.
Just check. I just want to check the background in terms of libel and.
It's slander on here. So.
Sorry, it's slander, isn't it? I beg your pardon.
I don't know. I always felt Matthew Setter was quite hard work. I think he would rub me up the wrong way within several seconds. I don't know. I did hang out with him a bit when I was in LA, like about 4 years after the show. He was a really nice guy, but I found him quite difficult to understand because he's got one of those strange minds that just fragments to 5 different conversations at once, and I find it difficult.
Although, if you're on a desert island, I mean, you would never run out of conversation because he would always have something to say.
But I think I'd have difficulty getting my point across. I think that would be
possibly.
It would speed up the inevitable process of you going mad.
Yeah.
There is that.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, somebody like Scott Grimes or Richard Speight would be great because they're musicians.
Yes.
So they keep you entertained.
Entertained, yeah. Or
not in a kind of like, dance for me. Scott, dance for me. I'm bored.
I'm gonna go Dexter.
Oh, that's a good choice.
I'm gonna go Dexter.
Yeah, that's a good choice.
I think
who's the best cook?
I reckon it's probably Dexter.
Yeah, I reckon
nothing that dude can't do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he's really close friends with that chef as well, isn't he?
He is. I just think Dexter's mine, definitely.
Yeah, that's a good
interesting.
Right. Well, we've done an hour and a half, and we've done 36 minutes with you, I think, Robin, which I think is enough time for your gloss to set.
Yes, apologies for my late appearance.
Yeah, well, time for the second coat,
no, I need to give it a fine sand first and then wipe it down with white spirits, wouldn't I?
Oh, wow.
Do things properly.
Professional. It's lovely to see you again, Robin.
I know. I was thinking about you recently, actually. I can't remember why you popped in my head. I thought, I haven't heard from Doug for ages.
Yeah.
I thought I must drop him an email. But then Matt got in touch and I was like, oh, well, I'll see him. You look very well. It's lovely to see you.
It's good to see your face, mate.
Lovely.
All right, beautiful boys.
Nice to meet you,
and thanks for coming on again, Ben.
Cheers, boys.
No probs.
Cheers, boys. Thanks for everyone for listening. And
good luck on the tour, guys.
Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next week. Hope you enjoyed this bumper episode. And we'll see you again. Cheers, guys.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.